Two. And can I get a motion? Did everyone have a chance, first of all, to see the minutes from 8/3? If I can get a motion
Yes.
to approve
Yes.
the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes
Motion.
from August 3rd.
Okay, and second?
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor?
Here.
Aye.
Abstain also.
401.
Abstain also, Rick, please.
Well, now we don't have a quorum to vote the minutes.
But I think we can still vote them.
Yeah.
As long as you have
Can
the
we?
quorum, the general quorum.
Okay. So then we have
302.
302. Okay. Hopefully, I did speak with Melissa Tentakoulis earlier. She said she was going to be joining us, and I gave her the link. But while we wait for her, I hope everyone had a chance to look at the spreadsheet, to pull a spreadsheet back out that Melissa Interest had provided, and I'd like to just start by going around looking for comments. She did a great job on the recommendations down the bottom, but I'd like to just go through everyone and see where there's an agreement and where they might want to add something to be identified as a recommendation as we try to hone this down. So Marge, you were the first one here. Can you have any comments to offer on recommendations?
Not really. The only thing I was thinking, I mean, I obviously have my preferences of what we should put forward. The seniors can't get to appointments. This is going to sound awful coming from a senior center director, but I don't know that we want to put that as a priority at this point, because we do have a lot for them, and we can generally find them a way to get to the doctor's appointments or whatever, between everything we have. And I don't think it's not that we don't need more, but I just think it's probably the other things are more important than that one piece.
Now, is this beyond the go-go grandparents is not providing that solution?
Beyond, it is, for the most part. There's still people that that aren't on it that probably could be. A lot of people that could be on it, but I think we have most of it covered. I mean, you're never going to cover everybody, so I think, and maybe not that we shouldn't maybe mention it somewhere, but I feel like the other priorities are the ones that are more pressing right now, and a transportation coordinator could work on that.
Then we probably should add at least the item as a recommendation. If you could put some words together on that, March, for our next meeting, and maybe think of what that means. I mean, is it that we don't have enough marketing material? Outreach? I mean, is it a little bit of all those things?
I think I think you're just never going to saturate, right? You're never going to reach everybody. And some people are, some people be like, I don't want to go in a car with one stranger, I'd be by myself. There's gonna be people like that.
Right.
But I just think we can't get to everybody. And I think between the van and the MBTA buses and the GoGo and Lyft, I think we've offered all we can. I think we've offered a lot that if somebody needs transportation, we can get them where they need to go. I mean, it's not perfect.
Can I
but
just ask a clarifying question? Are we walking through the spreadsheet right now, or are we just talking in
No,
general?
hopefully everyone had a chance to look at the spreadsheet, and we're going to go around the room and kind of get inputs for any additions. Like I said, Melissa had done a pretty good synopsis of what we've been talking about in her recommendation sections. And I hope everyone had a chance to look at it to see if there are things that we think we missed, just to outline the topics of how we'll define our recommendations. So if there's anything in the recommendations that she had down at the bottom that you feel have been overlooked, we should be discussing those at this point.
I personally think she did a great job of summarizing it and putting down what we want.
Yeah, I agree with Marge. I think I feel very similar. Like, I feel like I represent the schools, at least I'm officially representing the school committee. I have an exchange student who's a high schooler, so I have like some insight into being a high school parent now. She plays a sport. And I think, well, some sort of additional transportation would be great. I think my exposure has been like the kids get rides. Like I would love if we had a coordinator or even someone at the school to do a better job of coordinating those rides, but I don't think we need to spend $80,000 on an app that does that. Nor do I think even a late bus would really capture the kids that don't have an ability to. I think we need more data to really understand like what specifically is preventing you from doing this club, doing this sport. Yes, it might be difficult to get rides, but did you do it? Like I think we just need more nuanced data. I think that's captured here. I
Yeah.
would like to make it safer for folks to walk um, or bike because I think that's the tail end of, especially at the high school level. Um, they have the ability to walk and bike home, and if they could do that safely, I think that that should be an option for a lot of kids. So this definitely captures um, most of what I want to see in a strategic plan.
Thank you. Yeah, I did add on mine an after school transportation solution, just to put it as a placeholder. But I want to stop for a minute because now we have Melissa has joined us, and I want to be respectful of her time. Melissa, thank you. For those that don't know, Melissa Tintakis, I hope you all do, but she's our Economic Development Director for the town of Burlington. She also has a couple of side gigs. She sits on the board of the 128 Business Council, which is a transportation management association. In fact, I think it was the first in the state. We had a presentation early on in a regional plan from them. It's a great organization. But she also sits on the board of, as a voting member for Burlington on the Boston MPO. Good evening, Melissa. We really wanted to bring you in to maybe share some of your experiences. In her introduction, Melissa was also with the city of Somerville and the town of Lexington in economic development positions, has had a lot of experience with transportation. And I just think that sometimes the solution could be as close as your economic development office. But I wanted to give her an opportunity to just talk a little bit about what she sees as potential transportation needs in Burlington and maybe offer some insight on what's happened in other communities. So without any further ado, welcome, Melissa, and thank you for showing up.
Yeah, no, well, thank you for having me. So yeah, I mean, I think probably most relevant to this group is, the role in which I'm sitting on the MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which the federal dollars come through, and then a lot of the planning for bigger infrastructure projects come through, as well as more independent MassDOT projects around better connections, the Better Bus we get the updates on the Better Bus project. So I at least am starting to get a better understanding of kind of the regional transportation and some of the funding. On top of that, my background with economic development, the focus generally has been, that intersection with transportation and access to jobs, and how to, kind of make that happen for people really at the end of the day. And previously I had worked in Lexington where, there was a main corridor. We worked with a lot of the property owners and the businesses at the time to identify the fact that there wasn't transportation that linked that area back to Alewife. I was fortunate to meet up with some of the staff people at the Transportation Management Association, which is the 128 Business Council. And they're a long-standing transportation management association, so they had already been providing more business-oriented, transportation services. But that partnership led to a pilot program that we had some funding for through the state and federal government, and we started a shuttle program that really modeled after what they already had. And that today is still running, so it's a connection from Alewife to the Hartwell corridor. And it's funded in part by the town. So the town contributes some, and then the private property owners also pay based on the number of employees they have. So it's a negotiation with the tenants, because the property owners kind of pay it, but it's really a pass through that they will hit the tenants up for. But that said, no one could do it individually as well as doing it better together. So I guess I saw that in action, and I've because of that success, they asked me to be on the board, and I've been part of, Monica's team. She's the executive director there at that transportation management organization. And I think, Rick, she came here to talk to this group. So, she's well respected, hyper, intelligent and like into many things, but transportation is one of her key passions. So she had, part of my also talking to her, we talked about my transition to Burlington, what could be done out here, what other links and connections, given her analysis, given their resources, could be done. They did exploratory projects. I think you've seen some of them with some initial, what they called, bus in the box to kind of help transit. They worked with Lexington, who has its own position for transportation, which is Susan Barrett. And there were some ideas developed, but at the end of the day, they cost a lot of money. So where does that get paid? Like, who pays for that? Yeah, and usually ends up some of the final questions. Is it private partners? Is it municipality? Is it the state? Is it some other grant funding? So we couldn't get anything moved beyond where we kind of left it, as far as I know. I think, unless Rick, you've done sometimes things get advanced outside of my awareness, but as far as I know, that kind of moved into a holding pattern. And Lexington has advanced some requests to the state to expand Lexpress, and that's been positive, because if that actually does get funded, which I haven't heard yet either way, that would be some additional capacity out to Burlington. Very limited, but it's something to build off of. So there's that. I've been plugged into some of the MBTA revisions. I have not been as active with some of the bus proposals, I have to say, but no, they're important. And then I could speak to a little bit of roadway stuff, but I think this group is focused mostly on transportation. As transit. One thing that at least has caught my eye through these conversations is kind of how I think someone went online here, Melissa, maybe that was you, talking about, school transportation. And one thing that I had talked to Susan about in Lexington is how we segregate, a lot of our transportation, right? There's school for kids, there's council on aging, there's the business community employees, but, and it would be, this is kind of more rainbow, but what if we could, we took all those resources and stopped, kind of compartmentalizing them, and, and really added up how much money we're spending on all those categories, and then put something in place that was actually more universal in its service. And it's just something to think about. There's some towns that have looked at that, and that's where Susan kind of could talk to it a little bit more. But those are some things that I think about. I think at this point, one thing that gets, Rick and I talked about with transportation is not just transit, but really transportation and mobility. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is move, people around. And it's not going to be a silver bullet in any case, whether we get shuttles or more buses. So it's that mobility factor, better pedestrian connections, bike paths that are actually like safe. And then obviously the work that you guys are doing, and things like that. But so I try to advocate for, multimodal kind of efforts through projects and through my thinking and kind of policy analysis. But that's kind of where I'm coming from as well. I don't know if that helps,
Yeah, it absolutely helps. Melissa, could you I don't know how many people in this group know that Melissa is working on a program to look at the, I don't know what you call it, the mall corridor, the Blanchard Road Mall, South Bedford Street, Middlesex Turnpike Square there. Can you talk a little bit about how transportation might play a role in some of that? Because I know you're talking about interconnectivity with bikeways and in paths and just having these parcels connected, but what should we be knowing about that section regarding transportation?
So yeah, the mall, we've called it the Mall Road Middlesex Turnpike. I mean, it's evolving into a rezoning initiative that's, kind of, actually I see Ernie's on there. I just talked to Liz. We'll try to talk more about like what this is at the next planning board meeting. But the idea is looking at, land use, how it's currently zoned, and how we'd like it to be zoned to facilitate more mobility within the area. And an area stretches kind of essentially from, the Marriott down through Leahy and in through the mall, and as well as on Blanchard, the other side. But if we look at all the surface parking lots, there's over, you know, and what's possible, over 100 acres of potential infill development in this area. 100 acres is pretty substantial. And you could see that incrementally over time, but we don't have a zoning framework for that. What we're thinking about as a proposal is like, if we're unlocking some of that development, we really want the future developers to start investing in better connections through that area that we will have identified, whether it's better pedestrian connections. We haven't identified a solid bike route that's really truly safe yet, but we're trying to get to that point with some of these efforts. I know Tool Design is a consultant. They've done really great work on corridor and connectivity through, bike and multi-use paths. But that is, so it's classified maybe as a zoning initiative, but it's really going to, we really want to think of land use and transportation and this public realm connectivity between parcels. So we're not just having a series of business buildings, it's actually more of a village and how it looks comprehensively. So that's one thing. There's been a little bit more interest recently from the Nordblum's team on the bike path from Lexington into Burlington. I know there's some folks that want to, kind of meet and talk about that. And the other thing, there's, has been part of a different area of focus has been the town center and the safety and access there. But these are all pieces because if you think about the housing choice regulation that came in, and what you guys have probably talked about the MBTA communities, which is really transit-oriented development, right? They're trying to get people to, add some housing where the transit is. And what does our transit look like? How strong is it? Are things that are important as you look down into the future.
While we have Melissa here, does anyone have any direct questions for her? I mean, before I say that, Melissa, can you tell us a little bit about Lexington? You said that they had a transportation mobility coordinator. When did that happen? Was it during the time that you were there? I mean, how does one go through the process of getting someone there?
I mean, I think so they were always there. I had been there for almost, 7 years, and that position had always been there. So my understanding was back in the 70s, Lexpress was started to, kind of augment the internal flow, and it was run by volunteers for a while. That wasn't sustainable, and they were trying to expand it. So they allocated some money to a position. And I believe, yeah, I don't recall exactly how the funding for Express evolved, but they also, I know, this is why it's important to tie your development to transportation. through different development agreements, as projects have come online, there's been mitigation, and some of that money went to Lexpress to either fund it or put it in its kind of long-term almost endowment. So, but that has to be, these are kind of things we have to get into the common practice, not just one off here, one off there. And that's kind of when I think about our zoning. How can we establish more explicit, like if you're going to develop X, we expect X. And those X's are hard to pinpoint at this point. How much density do we want? How much do we need? And that kind of thing. But so that's kind of a challenge as we look forward, move forward. But it is important to have, identify what your unmet transportation needs are, so that you can express that, whether it's to the state or whether it's to, private development, going forward. And I think that's an important thing that I did have noticed, Lexington had done for a while. And when I came here, it was happening bits and pieces, but not as maybe consistently as we could have it through a regulatory process.
Thank you. And for those that don't know, we are working on the framework for exactly what she's talking about. What are the things that we will ask of developers, so the developers know what the rules of engagement are as well, and that we can have a unified approach to where, traffic mitigation, stormwater mitigation, things like that, to be able to have, a framework so people know what they're getting into. While we've got Melissa here, does anyone have any questions for her? Wow, this is an easy group, Melissa.
Easy group.
Well, well, there we go. Jeremy's in.
I have one. And I'm not sure there's an answer to this. First of all, thank you for joining us, Melissa.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. But as we go through this, a lot of us feel, and I think one of the recommendations is we need a transportation coordinator, and it's important for the long-term growth of Burlington. And, I don't have much experience in the public sphere. A lot in the private sphere. And it's the justification for something like that. So is this something that we have to find out how to put a value on to justify asking? Do you know if other towns have done things like that as they've gone up for proposals for a position like a transportation coordinator?
Yeah, I mean, I think in my experience, understanding what some other communities have done, that always that kind of research and background to have like a model, or, the precedent, if you will, right, of having a position like this. Maybe I see it a little bit, a lot of communities have adopted sustainability or diversity type positions. And I think kind of in looking at the justification, it can be broad, it can be, kind of some of it can be more reactive, but I guess one thing that we could look at, and I haven't really thought about it in this sense, but using that MPO board, let's ask that board who has someone, or, do they work better with some of the communities that have some kind of transportation coordinator? Because similar to economic development, it's not that you can maybe get by, but what happens is, like, without a point person, and that, someone running point to follow up on whether it's, initiatives, whether it's a complaint, whether it's grants, like if you don't have that, you're just missing it. So it's like floating down the river. I know with, with transportation, especially given the infrastructure bill that's passed at the federal level, MPO is expecting more funding. And some of that, would be from your Department of Public Works or Engineering. But you also have to have someone advocating, like, where is our bike path lane, or proposals for the town? Where are we today? Do we have, like, what, 5 miles of bike lane? How many do we want in, another 5 years? How are we getting to those things? Someone kind of holding the town accountable for, their community goals around transportation is how I see maybe that kind of position a little bit.
Jeremy, I'd like to just add on to that, because Melissa won't say this because she's too humble. there are very few positions within the town that can attract monies through grants, and being in the right place and having the understanding and having, someone on the team that could be pursuing this. And Melissa, I don't want to embarrass you here, but I do believe since Melissa's been in her position, she's brought over $1 million in grants to the town that we wouldn't have had without her. And I honestly believe that the transportation mobility, because we're going to put those two words together in everything that we say from now on, because a lot of it does tie together. And when you're going for grants, it needs a mobility portion in there. But Melissa's done a phenomenal job. And I honestly think that this is one of the other few positions where we could get a real bang for our buck to offset any costs in adding another person. So Melissa, I want to say thank you as a resident for what you've done. You've really put us where we needed to be at a time where we needed to be there.
Thanks, Rick.
Looks like we've got Marge had a question. And then we'll go to Ernie.
Ernie had his hand up first if he wants to go first.
I'm sorry, Ernie. I would never shy away from you.
Thank
Hi,
you,
Ernie.
Marge. If you're pushing, I will go. Hopefully, I won't steal your thunder. A question from Melissa. The traffic or the transportation coordinator, I guess you referred to them as in Lexington. Is it a full-time position?
It
And,
is.
Go ahead.
It is.
It is. Okay. Are you aware of any other transportation coordinators for any other towns, and are they all full-time positions? You know.
I haven't done, like, I guess
Yeah,
no, not explicitly. A lot of them become they're either transportation planners or transportation engineers that have that coordination role as part of their job description. So
they could
so
be
they might sit in different departments, but their role on mobility and making sure these elements of what we're talking about and being the point person to MBTA are part of their job description.
Okay, so they could be doing something else and also in some other towns. Is that what you're saying or not? I'm not. I want to.
They would.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are out of the councils on aging. There's a lot of councils on aging with
Really?
transportation
Okay.
coordinators. And they kind of start with just scheduling and then it just morphs into other things, is my understanding. So then so they're doing all of the other things, but they've started just with scheduling.
Yeah.
So they do that. They do the high level and then they do the lower level.
But Marcia, don't you feel like that is, I mean, that's a product of, moving the seniors around, but that hasn't been, I guess, as broad as like leading up, like a bike path initiative or something like that. Like that person that you're thinking of helps to move the council on aging clients around, but it's not as comprehensive as I guess what I was thinking of was more of these transportation engineers slash planners that might also do that depending. I'm not as familiar, but you're trying to kind of do more foundation, kind of systemic kind of changes too, which I think the coordinator tries to work on. And so the coordinator position is like, it's a little tricky. It depends on what you're looking for. Like if you're looking for just a person to schedule and follow up contracts with existing buses or shuttle service, that's a different skill set, if that's only a part of their job and then they're also, a transportation planner engineer, then they can understand what, kind of 25% designs are for making sure that, pedestrian access across that street is viable. So I don't know. I think that's a good question. Maybe what your objective is for the position.
Yeah, I think a lot of them have morphed out of just being transportation schedulers and into the high, like I said, the higher level, planning and grant binding and more like Susan Barrett.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe not, maybe early, but maybe not too early to talk or to think about is how if we actually advocated for a full-time transportation mobility coordinator, planner slash, that it would have to be sold to the people who hold the purse strings, town meeting. So I'm sure that's why I was kind of looking at what other towns are doing there. And not that I don't think it is something that would definitely help and would be needed, is needed. Um, but I was just maybe I'm getting a little before cart before the horse, I guess is what they would say. But and also two other things while I have it, Rick, if I can,
Absolutely.
and that is definitely, Melissa, I'd like to echo Rick's praise and add my own to your very good or your expertise in getting the town some grants and really filling a position which I think has been needed for a good 20 plus years here. Thank you. And Rick, to your I think it was your point on how we deal with developers and we've always tried to, at least on the larger developments, get everybody to understand there is some transportation demand management needed, but it's usually been in the form of, you know, carpools and things such as that. I think that's a good idea there to have actually a full set of this is what you're going to have to do or at least participate in. And yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Thanks, Melissa.
Well, if there's no more questions, Melissa, thank you. Thank you for coming here and sharing the information. It's if we don't talk, people don't know what's going on. Sometimes the answer is just in the next office. And you know, I want to let you know that we're going to be wrapping up in the next month or so with some recommendations. And we want our job is to make sure that we weren't just kicking the can down the road, but coming up with some objectives that are attainable. And I do want to just add that, you know, we looked at what is the cost of hiring another person, and I told you straight out, I'm not one that likes to add to the budget if we don't have to, but there's a cost of not doing things as well.
Mm.
And we've seen some of those costs, you know, our seniors not being able to get where they want to go, students not being able to participate in after school activities, employees deciding not to come here because they can't get around during the day. There is an unintended consequence of doing nothing, and that has a cost too. So we'll be in touch with you, Melissa. Certainly, I work with Melissa almost on a daily basis, so we keep the lines of communication open. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks,
Enjoy
everyone.
the rest of your night.
Okay.
Hi, Melissa.
Bye, guys. Bye, Marge. Bye, Ernie.
Okay. Any thoughts about the discussion with Melissa before we go on? She's sharp. She's real sharp, and I think you know, she's spread pretty thin as well, you know, covering the MPO, you know, sitting on that board. You have to be there in order to have your voice heard, and Burlington now has a seat at the MPO. So when you have traffic improvement programs that are on the tip, some of the ones that get pushed down the road are because people aren't there speaking on behalf. So having Burlington there is a key to make sure that we're heard from. Before we had the entire group on tonight, we started talking about, we skipped past Melissa because she was a little bit late coming in, going over the recommendations and the spreadsheet that Melissa Interes had spread around. We'd heard from Marge, and Marge added that there is a shortfall still for the seniors in being able to get to some appointments. She feels that, you know, the go-go grandparent solution is working well, but there are still some people that aren't reached. So I've asked Marge to just put some words together for that, so we can add that, you know, just so when we present to the selectmen, they know all of the issues that we discussed, not just the ones that are, you know, at the top of the list for recommendations. So Jeremy, if I could ask you to weigh in, and again, we're strictly talking about the recommendations that were on the spreadsheet down at the very bottom where Melissa had done a really good job of taking all the information and paring it down to, I think we're five items that she had there with some A, B's, and C's on a couple of them. So Jeremy?
Yeah, I really like and agree with them. I think maybe just the color being added to it is, I think the first one was transportation coordinator, transportation mobility coordinator, and just, maybe as we flesh it out, getting a little more detail there and about how we need them to work across this. And I think to the point Melissa brought up, tying the development, the transportation together is going to be really important. So I think it's turning it from that list and kind of getting it to not just be verticals, but go across and tie all together. I think, you can't do that on a list on a spreadsheet, but
Right.
I like the list, and I think, that would kind of put a bow on that.
Oh, it's a great point. And when Melissa was here and we talked about when the developer comes before the planning board, Ernie, you know this, when we talked about traffic demand management, primarily what the town was asking for was a contribution to belong to Middlesex 3 TMA, which they talk about ride share, they talk about biking to work. But it's a one-time investment. I think it was around 5K or something. This would be much more town centric. So when someone's coming into Burlington, it's to deal with the issues that we're trying to deal with and put money towards, whether it be a pool or a solution or helping offset the cost of our transportation mobility person that we're recommending. Melissa Massardo, I think you started weighing in when Melissa came in. I don't know if you had anything else to add or if you're chasing kids around right now.
I'm here. I think I agreed with. I mean, I don't have anything additional to add right this minute.
Okay. Then moving on, Ernie. We'll try the mute button one more time.
There we go. I'll keep on losing it. Sorry.
Thanks. That's no problem.
Yeah, I would agree with all the recommendations at the bottom. The only, as I was looking through it, the one that I thought, and I don't know if we can we can sneak it in, is I think there's a lot of people in town who are not familiar with what the transportation opportunities might be, and I know that. We put it on websites and talk about it on Facebook and the rest of that. But for some of us older gentlemen who might be what do they call them, Facebook trolls maybe or whatever, but not really participants to any great degree. I don't know how we would. I think just a mention of the fact that, and I don't even know how to phrase it the way it should be phrased, but make sure everybody knows about the transportation, and I'm talking more, I guess, more residents, but businesses too, that are available. Period. Because sometimes you run into people and they'll say, "Wow, I didn't," and mention something, and they'll say, "Wow, I didn't know that. You're kidding me, really? Is it?" So get the word out, but
Yeah.
more than that, you know what I'm trying to say. But
Yeah, and I think this group did a good job in the beginning of taking stock of the assets and working
yes,
with Jennifer from the planning department to
definitely.
put it on the website.
Yep.
Again, I think when you have someone focused entirely on transportation, marketing and information is one of the key components because people don't have a buy-in if they don't feel like they're part of the system. So we'll put that down there.
Yeah,
It's
good
gonna have
point.
to vote.
Part of the job of the transportation
Yeah,
person, for sure. Yes,
transportation mobility.
mobility, that's the word. Thank you.
And the reason it's the term that's being used because when people think of transportation, they immediately think of cars and buses, and that is a big part of it. But it's other forms of mobility, whether it be walking, biking, um, public transportation. It's thinking of the whole part of it, and that's really the solution. And it's key to some of the grants. If you don't have, mobility, especially for senior and disabled, you're not even in the game in being a candidate for the grant. Who else have we got? Catherine. Good evening. Did you have a chance to take a peek at the spreadsheet, and especially, and now that we've got Melissa interest back? Hi, Melissa. I hope your ears were ringing because everyone said you did such a great job on giving that kind of a synopsis down the bottom, and other than making sure we put the after school transportation in there as an item, I think you've nailed everything except what Catherine's going to say right now.
Well, again, that was the only thing I would have said to add is the after school transportation. I did, speaking of, you'd asked me to try and get the numbers to be 100 on the presentation. So I spoke to or contacted Bob Cuna, and he's reaching out to the the Burlington Against Racism group who put the survey together to see if we can get the actual numbers to see if there's a way to fix it. So I'm just waiting to get a response from them.
Okay.
Okay. Um, Other than that, we were talking about getting word out, and I know are there are at least 3 resident networks out there that people belong to, that if there's a way we can figure out a way to do some regular postings, or again, you're trying to get people to buy in. That's a place that there are lots of interesting conversations that go on, as we all know. I also troll that more than I participate these days. You do find some interesting info there. And then, maybe we can reach out to some of the, I mean, not that there are masses of people but we should probably maybe talk to BCAT, who's recording us, and maybe, have us do some sort of a, I don't know, question and answer thing that gets put on BCAT. Just use as much of the ways that people are getting news these days, to get word out about, what we're trying to accomplish and what we're doing, and the effects it will have if they're not paying attention. Um, with all the new businesses coming to town, and as things develop and change, and how important it is to have a way for people to get around, who are potentially going to work here, and then find a way to tie that all in, maybe with the seniors and the students getting around. I don't know, but that's all I have to add, I guess.
Thank you, Catherine. Melissa, have you thought of any other things that you might have left off that list since we spoke? And again, kudos to you. That was a great job. And you've done it, behind the scenes. Melissa does a lot to keep us going. I am just the pretty face that sits out front here. No. Nick, how about yourself? Are there any things that you'd like to add?
Honestly, Rick, nothing I want to add. I think that this committee is doing an amazing job, and focused in the absolute right direction. When we talk about transportation coordinator being, the first in the list of priorities, I think it makes sense when you talk about unlocking education, information, and dollars, right? I think that, in my opinion, something that we've learned as a committee is that, we can take all the incremental steps that we want, and, that might be enough at the end of the day, but that at a certain point, fundamental infrastructure changes would need to take place in a suburban area like ours to really, I think, push transportation to that next place. But regardless of what, tomorrow and 10 years and 20, 30 years brings, dollars are involved. So the most next logical step is somebody, full-time helping us coordinate, and, bringing those dollars in so that we can actually start to see change. Otherwise, we'll just keep talking about it chicken and egg style until, we're all on the ground.
Right. And one of the key things, I think we're at a critical point with federal dollars becoming available. Those communities that have a person, and not a person for a couple hours and, couple hours a month to talk about these things, but a professional whose ratings and their job will be based on their ability to perform and go after some of these grants. It's going to be out there, and certainly the ones that are in a position to be ready for it and have a detailed explanation of what the needs are. And we're providing a lot of the keys to that, to give the information on what that person should be looking for. But the transportation mobility coordinator is, I think we've all kind of agreed with that. As we found out, transportation is a very, very difficult thing. And there's cause and effect in doing something, but even more so in not doing things. And one last thing about Burlington's unique, and I know we don't like to use the word other than town, but we have a suburban urban town, and we have different needs on different sides of town, and we've got to be able to address that. And some of the things that have made us so successful is our ability to attract companies and help offset the costs of those that as residents we enjoy. And we there is a cost in doing that and making sure we can continue to keep it going. Having Melissa on board was one of the best things we ever did in this town. For those that might not know how the numbers all work, it's a great thing. There's not many other positions in the town that are generating that kind of revenue that's not coming from taxpayers. So Melissa, go ahead, March.
I was going to say, there's enough, I know even without the federal money coming in, there's enough money out there, I think, for a transportation mobility coordinator to actually write enough grants to cover their salary. I really feel that the money's there. It's fairly easy to get. You have to put the time in, and
Right.
without that person, nobody else can put that time in. We just
Yeah.
don't have that kind of luxury.
Well, during the time in this committee, I've gone to a couple of training on how to apply for grants for some of these things. You get a popsicle headache if you don't know, if you're not involved in it all the time, because it all leads to the work you've got to do up front and be ready to pull it together to come at the right time. And most of the time, I say, yeah, the grant opportunities open in May and they close in June. So you got a month to compile data that takes you 6 months. So those that are ahead know how to get it. Melissa, if you could just remind us on our next steps forward. I know Jeremy started working on, the slide presentation of how we're going to put it in there, but we did agree that we're going to stick an extra meeting in here somewhere to help have this thing come to fruition.
Right. Yeah, that would be the next thing, is to find a working meeting date where we could come together, and either in person or virtually, and just work on the presentation, trying to get the content into those slides.
What are people's thoughts on an in-person meeting? I mean, I know when I see, if you got kids, it's difficult, and we could probably do hybrid, but I do think there
It's
is something.
easier for me to go to a meeting.
Ditto.
Is
I was going to
your
say, I would
spouse in
think
the
it's
room?
easier to.
In person's fine with me.
All right.
Yeah.
But I have to go. Sorry, I got another commitment I have to get to.
All right, Catherine,
Bye, Catherine.
Sorry about that.
we're gonna sign you up for our in-person meeting.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
float
you're
some
gonna
dates.
sign me up to. If you leave early, you never know what you're gonna get signed up for, right?
That's right, Mrs. Chair.
All right. Take care. Bye
See ya.
bye.
Bye, Catherine.
So if there's anything I've learned in the last 2 years in the pandemic, getting 3 people together at a time is difficult. So let's talk about a time that we think we might be able to get together for a working meeting.
Could we look at a Wednesday again, like in a couple of weeks? Is this since this time might be reasonably good for people?
Does anyone have problems with Wednesday nights?
I just have to start at like 7 instead of 6:30, if that's a possibility.
I'm generally good, but I would not be able to make the 21st.
What about the 28th?
Okay. 28th is good for me.
Yeah, I think I
Works
can.
for me.
28th works.
28th is good for me.
Do we want to meet at the senior center in our conference room?
That'd be good, Marge. Is it open that late on Wednesdays?
We're open
She's
till
got the
7
keys.
anyway, and there's a custodian there till 10, so we're fine.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
Then we don't have to worry about who's using the meeting room or
Yeah,
anything.
sure.
Do we,
Okay,
do you have, I assume you have display capability, like I could just bring laptop and plug in and then, or Jeremy, if, you know, and we could just do, or we could both do it and then we could be editing, like if you're doing Google Slides or something, we could all be editing at the same time.
So can I have a show of hands who can make the 28th, 7 o'clock at the Council on Aging? Nick, have you got a hand in there? That's
I
not,
do. Hand up. I'm there.
okay.
All right,
Now-
28th at 7 at Council on Aging, which is at the, you
61
took
Center
over the
Street.
whole, you took over the whole building, right?
All of downstairs and part
Oh,
of upstairs, but
Okay.
yeah. Bye, Nick.
Bye, Nick. Thank you. Now, I apologize for not knowing Andrew Jennings, who seems to be dialed in here as well. Andrew, did you have any questions before we adjourn?
No, I'm Bill Rickards' representative on the Lowell Regional Transit Authority, and we're having struggles in Billerica about how to organize our transportation effort. John Strauss said that you guys do a lot of good things, so I thought I'd listen in on a meeting and see what you were talking about and how you were organizing it.
Well, I'm glad that John said nice things about us. Now, Andrew, now that I hear your voice, we've met several times. Yeah, as you well know, transportation is a very difficult thing, especially when you ask everyone what their opinion is and what the needs are. And then you just have to kind of pare it down to how you can get the best bang for your buck and solve the biggest problems first and show that you're making progress. But keep doing a great job. You're doing a great job in the LRTA. We like when it comes in and shows up on time. It gets people here.
Well, you can try it for free on Saturday, September 17th. If I think that announcement's up on your website.
Yes, it is. John had shared that with us. Thank you.
Good.
All right, if there aren't any other questions, comments, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Rick, that's a firm date?
Wednesday, the 28th at
Okay.
7 o'clock at the Council on Aging. Yes, it is.
Thank you.
I don't know what we need regarding, Jeremy, you got a comment? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. I was on mute when I started to speak, so I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I mocked up some slides, and so again, can I share that with this group in an editable format, or is that in violation because it's not in the open? If it's like a Google Doc,
I
should
don't
I
think
hold
you
that
can-
until we meet on
I
the
don't think
28th?
we can do that.
I didn't think so. So
You can share
I
them.
haven't shared it.
We
I've got
just can't
something.
talk about them.
Yeah, you can share them, but we can't comment back on them, right? At least to the group.
Yeah, I mean, we could at least look at the structure, I guess, to prepare, and then the working meeting, we can plug stuff in.
Yeah, I think that would be great, Jeremy, if you could do it the same way that Melissa had done it with hers, and we save our comments for going forward, because sometimes it takes a while to digest it, and we could be spending time doing that right now. And I appreciate you doing this, because that's really going to
Yeah.
take that finished product.
I've got some things mocked up, and I've even got some fake data on a chart or two, but I didn't want to put anything in or solid recommend
We love fake
on
data.
it. So I'll share. I'll share it with the group,
Thank you.
and we can talk about it on the 28th.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you, folks. Melissa,
Motion to
thank you for
adjourn.
taking notes.
Second.
I took some.
Okay,
Melissa, you took some notes?
Yeah, I'll send them to you.
Yeah, just send me what you have. I picked up when I jumped on, which was after Melissa Tintakoulis left, I guess. I was hoping to see her, but that's okay. Yeah,
Right,
so
we have-
just send it.
we have a motion to adjourn a second.
Second.
All
Yeah,
in
Marge
favor?
seconded. Yep.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye. We've got one,
Aye,
two,
aye,
three,
aye, aye.
4, 5, 6,
Nice and
0.
nice and short tonight.
All right.
Thanks, folks. I appreciate it.
Good night.